When talking about World War II, people often think of fierce battles on land, the sound of guns echoing across Europe, or the sight of bombs and shells falling over the skies of England. But there was another front, quieter, invisible, and more brutal than anywhere else, the cold ocean, where Nazi U-boats operated like ghosts in the deep sea. Imagine, you are a young man, your eyes still shining with excitement for life. You have just been assigned to be a sailor on a submarine, hailed as the pride of the Third Reich. But you do not know that your survival rate is less than 30%. The numbers speak. Most of those soldiers never returned to the surface. So what caused thousands of people to die in the cold deep sea? Was it just the war? Or was there something hidden behind the cold steel of the U-boats? In today's video, we will embark on a journey to decode one of the bloodiest mysteries in world history, a place where space is limited, fear is extreme, and death is always lurking at every breath. This is not just a story about war. This is a story about people, about life and death, and about souls still trapped in the ocean. In September 1939, just hours after Britain declared war on Germany, the war at sea officially began. The Nazis launched a series of U-boats to attack the Allies' lifeline. They were silent predators. No one knew where they came from, but once discovered, no ship could escape. Hailed as the silent warriors of the ocean, U-boats possessed advanced technology at that time. They could hide underwater for hours, use torpedoes with terrifying accuracy, and especially the blind bravery of the crew. But inside that cold iron shell, there was a mobile prison. The sailors lived crowded in a space of less than 3 square meters, with no sunlight, thin air, and temperatures that could reach 45 degrees Celsius. The smell of engine oil, sweat, and fear mixed together to create a toxic atmosphere that haunted every breath. A former German sailor wrote in his diary, "Nobody told us that when a submarine sinks, you don't die instantly. You hear the screech of steel being compressed, the lights go out, and then everything goes dark. The water rushes in like a demon, and when you die, it's not a quick death." The U-boat became a symbol of terror and death, not just for the enemy, but for those who piloted it. Can you imagine living for months under the sea, seeing no light, no fresh air, and every time you heard a sound, even a faint echo, you could believe that it was the last moment of your life? On a U-boat, there was no day or night. There were only watch schedules, shifts, and orders programmed into the war machine. Sailors had to share blankets and moldy loaves of bread. Many slept on torpedoes because there was no room to lie down. Fresh water was a luxury. There was not enough water for bathing or washing. Sometimes there was only one bucket of water for the entire crew. After a few weeks, the smell of body odor, metal, and engine oil stuck to the skin, to the point that it was impossible to wash away. Some people who were newly assigned to the submarine collapsed after a few days from panic, claustrophobia, or even psychological disorders, something that people at that time simply called weakness. Another veteran recalled, "Every time we dived, I kept thinking, is this the last time?" Once the ship was detected by British radar. They dropped a bomb. The explosion sounded like the end of the world. We held our breath for hours. Everyone thought we were dead. When we surfaced, the water was halfway up the ship. One of my friends was missing. But the strangest thing was that there were sailors who, when they returned to land, asked to go on the next trip. Not because they wanted to fight, but because on the ship they felt they belonged to something bigger than them. Many people think of war at sea as heroic naval battles, warships shelling, sailors cheering. But for U-boats, war was a silent hunt. The Nazis knew that if they attacked the British-American fleet head-on, they had no chance. But if they could cut off the supply chain, they could bring the British Isles to their knees. U-boats were ordered to hide and attack quickly. They attacked convoys in the middle of the Atlantic, a place known as the death zone, because once you entered it, you lost all contact with the mainland. And if you were attacked, No one could come to your rescue. From 1939 to 1942, U-boats sank more than 2,500 ships, causing heavy losses for the Allies. They once roamed as far as the American coast, causing panic to the point that entire cities had to turn off their lights at night to avoid being detected from offshore. However, technology began to change the situation. The Allies developed radar, sonar, Enigma code-breaking machines, and especially anti-submarine bombers. The steel monsters were now hunted in turn, no longer as hunters but as prey. By 1943, there were more than 700 U-boats that the Nazis launched across the oceans. But to date, more than half have never returned. And the most haunting thing is, many have disappeared without a trace. Some wrecks were only discovered more than 70 years later when modern seabed scanning technology was advanced enough to detect them. And when they were discovered, most were still intact, as if time had frozen. The crew inside were still there. There were still cigarette cases, personal diaries, and even some skeletons still wearing military uniforms. A typical example is U-3523, a Type 21 submarine, the most modern of its time. In 1945, it disappeared from radar after leaving port. It was not until 2017 that Danish marine archaeologists found its wreckage at a depth of 123 meters, more than 10 nautical miles from where it was thought to have sunk. They did not salvage it, nor did they violate it. They called it a warrior's grave, because inside that ship, there were still people who had lived, fought, and hoped to return. But what was more frightening was that hundreds of U-boats had never been found. They disappeared as if swallowed by the ocean. So what really happened? Some theories suggest that some ships were trapped under the Arctic ice. Others suspect that some sailors surrendered or defected, sailing to remote areas. Even South America, where it was rumored that Nazi remnants had been hiding. Some post-war reports even recorded fishermen detecting strange sonar signals on the seabed, coming from what was once a U-boat battlefield. Were they sonar waves from drifting wrecks? Or were they the last messages from souls who had not yet been released? All is just an unsolved mystery. Today, submarines are an indispensable part of every navy, but few people know that most modern tactics and designs have their origins in U-boats. It was the Nazi killing machines that made the world realize modern warfare is no longer an open contest, but a silent battle of wits underground, at the bottom of the ocean. But the legacy of the U-boat is not only in technology. It is also a warning about the cruelty of war, about how humans can turn themselves into hardware of a killing machine and accept sacrifice in silence, just to serve the ideals drawn by others. Of the more than 40,000 people who served on U-boats, only about 10,000 survived. That means more than 30,000 souls have been left in the deep sea, without a tombstone, without a funeral. As we look back, let us ask ourselves, have we really learned anything from these sufferings? Or have we merely changed our technology while still maintaining the same old way of thinking? That victory must be won at any cost, even if it means burying a generation. The Nazi U-boats were killing machines, but the sailors on them, many of them young men, caught up in the brutality of the times, they had no choice, and they had no way out. The only thing they had left was the belief that their sacrifices had meaning. Are we, the survivors of a century of poverty, violence, and war, living in a way that is worthy of the price they paid?